chapbook, and these are all kind of persona poems, but they're all kind of celebrity poems. The first one, the celebrity, is Typhoid Mary, and it's called The Unrequited Love Story of Mary Mallon. Everyone cries but Mary, who moves with lifted head above the famished crowd. Everyone is too miserable to know they're hungry. It is Mary who can't stop eating, won't stop cooking. She grows bigger, hips knocking bony patrons who come to dine, but can't bring themselves to order, or worse, leave food congealing on their plates. Mary busses the tables she served and, hidden in the kitchen, eats their wasted food without fork, unknowingly recreating the taste of salt on his skin. And thought that was apt for today, I guess. I don't know. A lot of these celebrities are dead, like Typhoid Mary, and the next one is Thelonious Monk. And this is a poem called Misterioso, and it's after this title, like his piece, his song, Misterioso. Here he goes. Monk's goatee pointed somewhere over my shoulder. I turned and looked where it was directed me and saw floating in the cafe, half tones and tritones and seconds bleeding through the air. I didn't think they'd look like that. I had imagined music to look as it is notated, fat balls with erect tails. But music is fuller and amorphous and polychromatic. The word synesthesia came to mind. I could not hear the music Monk played anymore, just the aftertones, notes not found in a single piano key, but resounding in a case and against the harp. I couldn't concentrate anymore. I followed the sound to an altar covered in purple and lavender and black, knelt on a prayer bench covered in red velvet, and to hear clearer, took a vow of silence. The next one is called King of Pop Sonnet. The last reading I did, someone read a poem about Michael Jackson, and I haven't read this poem about Michael Jackson because he is canceled, but I don't know, I like this poem. It is a sonnet, sort of. So, well, it's 14 lines. Michael Jackson no longer feels highs and lows and barbs at his demeanor, his looks, no longer sings in falsettos or cries out in jubilant syllables, he or who. Michael Jackson's worries of tabloid covers, billboards, ratings gone. His skin, sepia or stained deck browns, concerns no one. And he hides his love life from no one here. Michael Jackson is weary of the sea now, but at peace, and the sun is warm and the living so easy. If he wanted to, he could spit up into the air, arcing the spittle across the bow of the boat, watch it glitter like so many studded gloves. Okay, I'm gonna read a poem that I forgot I wrote that should be in this book. And it's called Anthony Kiedis Puts on a Shirt. Do you guys know who Anthony Kiedis is? He's the lead singer to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And in his heyday, he used to take off his shirt all the time. Well, anyways. Laundered 100% Pima cotton, carefully buttoned onto a soft hanger, smells like nothingness, white like sun-bleached stones, fits over tattoos, tribal and otherwise, fits over tanned biceps, fits under impressive hair. On Anthony Kiedis' mind is every song he's ever sung. Ballads and rock and funk, he couldn't give the key to cacophonous of his secrets whispered over music. The cotton nicely spills over the yoke spread across his back, bracing those muscles forgivingly. That's the first time I've read that poem. You are the first people who have heard that poem, because I forgot that it existed. This next poem is part of an Crazy series I'm doing about people of color and paintings or artwork by white artists. And this poem is the poem that was the first one published out of that series, and that's ongoing. When I find money, I'll finish it probably. And this one is called Paul Gauguin, Woman with a Flower, and it was published by Great Weather for Media and a recent anthology of theirs. So this is Paul Gauguin, Woman with a Flower. This white man, he watches us, he makes us with brushes, he calls them, he stares at us and touches us. He takes us and makes us all brown, even the whites in our eyes. He makes us his, he watches us. He gives us clothes like his. He dresses and undresses us. This white man, he tells us that we are true, that we are nature. This white man, he tells us we're before him, says we're primitive, even though we're right there with him. How am I doing on time? Do I have time for one more? Okay. All right, this is one more poem. And this is surreal because I can't hear you guys. So it's like I'm talking to my television screen. This is from the book called From the Ashes. It's, I know it's backwards, but it's an anthology published by Animal Heart Press. And this is called Button Sonnet. I know you can't see me, but I'm over 200 pounds. And one of the things that I noticed when I gained all this weight after having twins is that my belly button kind of disappeared inside of my belly. So this is Button Sonnet. I have lost my belly button. It's unfortunate. I liked it. The alliterative, silly nature of the words bouncing together. The idea that a human has a button implies the possibility to press it and see what happens. Press it and wait patiently. But mine is now gone. I've lost my patience. My belly button grew like the rest of me, round with no end. I am without end. I extend beyond my confines and folds of excess where my navel hides. Thank you.
Yeah. Great job, DeMisty. I was trying to narrate my reactions so that you could know you weren't alone. And it definitely is surreal, I think, doing these readings online where you can't hear people verbally annotate or whatever. So next up, we have Kasey Jueds, and Alan is gonna introduce her.
Kasey Jueds, she, her, hers. First book of poems, Keeper, won the 2012 Agnes Lynch Starrett Prize from the University of Pittsburgh Press. Her poems can be found in journals including American Poetry Review, Crazyhorse, Narrative, Beloit Poetry Journal, I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, Ninth Letter, Denver Quarterly, Cherry Tree, Colorado Review, and Pleiades. Her reviews appear in Salamander, The Rumpus, Tar River Poetry, EcoTheo, and Jacket 2. She lives in Philadelphia with one human, a spotted dog, and many houseplants. And we got a chance to see the dog management a couple of days ago, and it really reminded us of our own. So, but yeah, I linked the book to the chat. So for those of you who have come in since the first reading or during the first reading, definitely check out that link. You can buy that book. All right, so I'm going to turn it over now to Kasey. Thank you for reading.
Kristi and Alan, thank you so much for doing this and for having me. This is really, really lovely of you guys. And DeMisty, I love those poems. It's really, really great to read with you, and I'm excited for your book. And I'm excited to get your previous book, your finishing line book. I'm looking forward to both of these, reading both of these. And this is also just like such a lovely audience. Many, many, many wonderful people. Thank you guys for being here. So, okay, so now I will read. Yeah, this is weird. I can see you, but I can't hear anything. So, and this is this is the first Zoom reading that I have done. So I'm going to read a poem from my book. Actually, I'm not sure you can see it at all. It's a very dark cover. I'll read one poem from the book, and this is a Florida poem. I was little in South Florida, and it's called To Swim. Can everyone hear me? Yes. Okay, good. Thank you. To swim. Dear water, I loved you best back then. My upside down house, kinder than sidewalks or too high branches, the bent red bike that tipped me to the street. Blue, more blue, and the quiet, more quiet, where I could be the anhingas I'd seen, floating and diving, there and gone and there, swift as fists or Sunday school angels parting the clouds of heaven. I learned because my mother was afraid, knew canals and pools, the eager sea, as so many places a child could drown. I learned because she loved me, and I fell like Alice into somewhere else, my feet leaving tiles or a motorboat's side to ride on almost nothing. Because she was afraid, I called myself a bird, a fish, and because she loved me, I tried to be a boat and grew myself to fear and love until they became like children, mine, twins, who looked so much alike, I could hardly tell them apart or ever hold them close enough. So thank you. I'm reading from paper because I'm old-fashioned that way. So that's why I'm looking sort of off to the side. This is DeMisty. Sometime I want to talk to you about Wisconsin. So I'm going to read some poems. My dad's family is from Wisconsin, and I spend time there almost every year, not this year, obviously, but almost every summer. And so I'm going to read a bunch of poems that are Wisconsin-based. Not a bunch, just a couple. Don't be worried. And this is the first one. This is called Litany Easter. And it's about a river called the Little Wolf, which is near the place where I visit. A river that I've known for a long time. Litany Easter. River of the flooded banks, of water muddied to mahogany like oversteeped tea. River where, come summer, my sister and I would float our child bodies over the deep place by the bend, reach our feet down to find the sandy bottom and fail. River fastened between banks by piles of shells the otters left, stellular, gleaming pale against the storm-flattened grass. River like a steeple, intent on its elsewhere, river giving its name to the dead-end road, dividing what we thought we knew from what we never could. Riven, rising all March, and then Easter, when the sky held, the rains didn't come, and we were given the old story to hold on our tongues, the one of the stone rolled away from the tomb, and the woman who stayed to weep. Years later, a different version. When she finds him, she kisses his feet. Come summer, our own feet would blur to ghosts when we swam, blanched, then vanished into the river's dim. Not quite afraid, we'd draw our knees to our chests where breasts were beginning to rise, until we could see again what we half thought we'd lost, return to us because we'd asked. But before then, it was Easter, too cold to surrender our bodies to water. And we did not know yet how to give away pieces of ourselves, how to play the old game of hide and hope to be found. Okay, I'm going to read a few more Wisconsin-y poems. This is a Wisconsin winter poem, and it's called Not All the Animals Sleep. There is always an away. We've abandoned the field to winter and winter's trance of ice, hemmed by the wrecked wire fence whose rusted barbs can still snare skin, still claim a kind of edge. We've abandoned the house to the frozen air no one breathes, save the mice and the smallest insects lost to their dormancy. Now, when floorboards crackle and chime, it is not our feet forcing them to sing out. All around, the deer draw close to graze the blades of grass left sheltered near the wall's remnant warmth. They circle the house, drawing it into itself. They take what has always been theirs. Ladder of cloud climbing away from the clenched field, seed heads of weeds stamped against the snow like a long ago language. Long ago, and miles north of here, an island vanished, slipped back into the lake that birthed it. And long before that, a glacier birthed the lake. Receding, it left behind a hollow into which water found its way. Here and everywhere, the deer find what they can to eat, and some of them will starve. That island, how sudden or not, the blue took it back. that lake the coldest and most remote. Here, when the snow recedes, I can imagine flowers might return, repeating yellow, yellow. But how not to count the days or hours till then? If you will draw near, if you will teach me, please teach me this. Okay. I'm going to read, if I have time. Do I have time? I'll read two more. Okay, thank you. All right, so this is another Wisconsin poem. This is called Body of Water. Before the river folded over its otters, the lake with its drowned smell and its raft calling you toward it like a promise of August. Long before the one who rested his head in your lap and slept, you came to this town and its small pond trembling with koi. Sidewalks releasing the day's stunned heat, the trees bleeding their edges into dark. And behind storefront glass, the mannequins lit all night, silk and muslin falling slack from their hips into another way of saying, I want. What did it matter? They had no hands, their solid bodies refusing the invisible work of spleen and heart, lungs and blood. You stood by the pond as the fish swarmed the banks, opening their mouths against the thin place where water collides with air. Sometimes you could hear from the music building nearby a student touching piano keys inside a room, petals of sound touching tentatively the place inside you where you could not say what was waiting. You waited where the gold and red bodies of the fish flashed inside the transparent body that held them. Inside the building, room after room, and inside one of these, music. What did it matter? The doors were closed. You had hands and blood to move them. Blood you still pictured as red like the fish, though coiled in the body. You must know this by now. It is, as any water may show itself, blue. I realize I'm completely not looking at you all. Sorry about that. But I have one more, and this one is very new. Like it's maybe a month old or so, and it's called "Coracle," means a small vessel, a boat. Coracle means a small vessel, a boat. You may wonder when the rain will end. May trace a map with your gaze until it snags the flooded place, the unfamiliar river blued as church bells or air inside an empty shoe. Again and again, you may begin the letter. May open your mouth to speak, but stop when you hear through the wall the voice of one you love. Remembering the paddock where the piebald horse used to rest, you may worry the word shelter on your tongue. Write, please, write certain, then draw a line through both. The cherry tree's trance of petals tumbled bit by bit to sidewalk, months ago, more. You may print an address in tender letters, wish the house far above floodplain, its walls waveless and the woman inside them safe. Wonder where the horse and why such iron sky. When every violet map line casts you back to that other river, always known, sometimes sharp surfaced with sun, and others trembled, troubled, some storm coming close, its first drops still countable, a falling able to be taken back, vanishing into itself. Thank you.
Incredible. Great job, everyone. What we did last time that I think worked really well was to open it up now for questions. And you can voice questions in the chat, I guess, or say, hey, I'd like to be unmuted because I have a question.
I think you can unmute yourself.
Oh, okay. You can unmute yourself. Okay. So yeah, who would like to start us off?
Thank you
Tarn.
both so much. They were both really beautiful, like really different, but really balanced each other in a really nice way. So I'm excited to hear about what you're thinking about related to poetry right now, what you're working on, if there's certain themes or forms that are exciting you, both of you.
Yeah, maybe we can start with DeMisty.
That was rude. I think writing is really hard now, probably mostly because it's hard to get inspiration. I don't get to go out and see people as much as before March, as you know. But the book Rubbing Elbows, I wrote prior to 2016, most of those poems. So my poetry has changed even since then. I started writing a lot of neo-slave and protest poetry and anti-capitalist poems. So that's what a lot of my new book is. And as far as poetry now, I think I'm a lot of it is more personal and more about family, especially family I can't see or will never see again. So, and it's a very childish worry. I don't know how loud I should say this because kids are in the background, but I have this like insane fear that I won't see my parents again because they're still in Wisconsin and here I am in Massachusetts and I don't know when we'll be able to meet again. So I think that's why I'm kind of pulling to family. And recently I was talking to my mother on the phone and she started talking about when she grew up in the South and she was talking about the farm that my uncle had there and just how life was in the 50s, early 50s. For Black people there. So I was just like, there's gotta be something there. She told me some of those stories I heard a lot and you're like, oh yeah, I know, wait, you had to go to the back or the fair was closed for you. But now, you know, as I'm older, I'm just like, there's something there. So yeah.
Great answer.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. He said great answer, but it might have been muted. Kasey, did you want to respond to Tarn?
Sure, Tarn, it just makes me so happy to see your face and hear your voice. And DeMisty, yeah, I can relate to a lot of that. It's been hard for me to write as well. I feel better when I do it. I feel healthier and more centered, and I have better energy, and it makes me happy. Or happier or more joyful actually is probably a better way to put it. So I'm trying. The thing that I feel like I most want to write about is also really hard for me to write about, which is I would like to write more about Florida. Tarn knows my poems. We've known each other's writing for a long time, and she knows my poems are very inspired by place. And Florida is the place where I was really small. It was sort of the first place that I loved and that I felt really deeply connected to the landscape of. And I also have been away from it for a very, very long time. I've been back to visit occasionally. I miss it. I find myself missing it so much more as I get older and thinking about it with a lot of pain, not only because of being separated from it, but because it's, I'm from Miami, so it's a place that's being really severely impacted by the climate crisis, and will continue to be so. And the Everglades is a place that is really dear to my heart, and that as well, has been a place of lots of struggle and devastation for the natural world for a long time. So I think that the difficulty for me is partly that that Florida is it's so far away. Like it's so far away geographically, it's far away in my memory. I feel myself really wanting to write about it, and I'm just not sure how to approach it because of that farness. And I think also because of the sadness that I feel around it. I think I have some anxiety about, well, more than some anxiety and sorrow about approaching that sorrow. I think there's like much more sadness there than I have allowed myself to feel. So it's a good question, Tarn. Thank you.
I think that that makes sense. You know, we're all going through this unprecedented crisis, and the way it's being handled in various places as well as nationwide and globally is really scary, to say the least. So I think it's interesting, and I really admire that the way both DeMisty and Kasey answered that was from lived experience first,
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, the way that Tarn phrased it, to my understanding, is you could have answered it very craftfully, in a very craft-centric way, which is another can of worms that hopefully we can dive into whenever we want. But I really appreciate the question and the answers, I guess, is all I have to say for now. Are there other questions, or just, you know, things people want to say to our readers?
We might have time for one more. We should. We will. We do have time for one more.
I think I loved your answers. I loved your readings as well. But I really loved your answers. And Kasey, you talk about farness. How about going into that farness and start there? Because there are so many ways you could go. And so, because it seems from how you talk about it, Florida seems many things. I come from reading Osier, Jill Osier, very closely right now, as Hannah knows, because I'm working on a review. So what you talked about reminded me of her walks in her books. The Solace is Not the Lullaby, by Jill Osier. So you could be inspired by that.
Borgie, I feel like I want to talk to you more about this. So sometime we will do that. But I think that's a really good suggestion, to write into the farness. And I think that's what I will have to do. That is like what I have, and it is a place that I want to write into. Another poet friend said that to me as well, and she recommended Anne Carson's book, Knox, which I read, but not for a while, but as a way of, I think, kind of that idea of writing towards or into or about something that you have only as fragments, that feels very far away, that you don't have anything close to the whole of, and something that's absent or gone. I mean, in her case, it was a sibling. And in this case, it's you know, it's this beloved place. I think that's really good advice. Thank you. Yeah.
And Bergie, if you wouldn't mind, could you please type the poet's name? You said you were reviewing the chat, so we could look it up. Thank you so much. And I don't know if we have anything else we'd like to tackle in this given time. I think that we have a couple more minutes. What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, I was wondering about peculiar heritage, DeMisty, and kind of like the conversation that just happened with Kasey. Also, kind of like how you view that, because we haven't read that, obviously, and how does that kind of place and heritage come to play in your upcoming book?
In that book. So that the title comes from like the peculiar institution of slavery, and the idea of that was working from, okay, as a country we have this history, and what moved out of that, what came from that, and it was it started off as very reactive. I'm sorry if people are Trump fans, but when he was elected, a lot of people asked, well, how can this be? And one of the answers was, to me, is like, well, how couldn't it be? Because we kind of raised ourselves to this point. And so it was looking at a lot of our past and our present to get to that point. And I started off also as, Peculiar Heritage is a poem, and it's the first poem. And it's about the idea of, a slave master both looking at his slaves as lesser than, but still having sex with them. So it's just like this idea of like, okay, how do we deal with this, progeny of American slavery? And how do we escape from that? So I was looking at ways to escape. So a lot of those poems at the first part of that book are viscerally, they're kind of ugly in that way, because they're talking about things that we don't want to talk about. But eventually I moved to where escape is just looking at beauty. So I start looking more at environmental things, and not so much environmental, but just home, the idea of what home is later. And I am from Wisconsin, so a lot of that, even if I don't say it explicitly in the work I do, and I notice this in Kasey's work, it's a lot with the water. In Wisconsin, everything is water. And I think if you're not from that state, you don't think of it as a wet state. But I grew up in Milwaukee, so there's like Michigan, and there's tons of rivers in Wisconsin and in that area, tons of small lakes. And Michigan is a huge lake, so I do talk a lot about water in that one too. I don't know if I answered your question at all, Ellen.
It's a great question. It's a great answer. We are running low on time, so I'm gonna first thank everyone who came, and definitely our authors for reading for us. Next, I think it's Wednesday, the 22nd.
Yes, that is when the next
We
reading
have
is.
Sarah Chavez and
Jonathan Woodlarsky. So we will have some fiction in with this, which I had originally asked multi-genreists and fiction writers, but as the luck of the dice rolled, fiction people had too much going on this summer, okay? And there's nothing we can say about that. That's how life is. But it's exciting, and we're very thrilled. Thank you all so much for coming to this. I have, these questions are so wonderfully enormous. I feel like we could all just talk about them forever. So maybe just future Zoom calls for fun with no pressure to read is like a spontaneous idea that I'm having. Readers, we have been recording this, so stay tuned to get a recording from us. And, please come if you can next week. Mm-hmm. We would love for you to spread the word, especially if you have, other literature lovers or students who need some exposure in your life. And what else?
My social media, you can connect with Alan James Blair. That's at Twitter. Mm-hmm. And then another thing that I've been doing lately is Instagram. I just kind of have been on there. I'm a photographer, so I'll post some photography, but also hype this event, this wonderful event. So you connect with me there. That's Alan Criketus. That's the Latin word for hamster. And it's C-R-I-T-E, C-E-T-U-S.
Spell it in the chat.
Yeah. So either of those places, if you want to try to connect with me on Facebook, I am very politically motivated. I am very much a liberal. And so if that's something that bothers you, you might not want to connect to my Facebook. But if you do, sorry, I'm spelling out Criketus. Then go ahead and connect. Same thing, Alan Criketus. And yeah, and then Kristi's got her stuff on there. We have got about a minute left on the timer, so I'm going to turn it over to Kristi for last.
I have nothing of dire consequence to add other than please put in your calendars DeMisty and Hannah's books that are upcoming in the next year. And I love too how they have like a relationship, because you know Dee is writing about the heritage of slavery, and Hannah is writing about being descended from I think it's slave owners or people adjacent to the trade. Yeah, so, and the complications with that. And again, as you know, most of you know my personality. Yeah, I hope no Trump fans were here during the exciting event, but if you were, hopefully we gave you something to think about.
Very excited for those
and,
books.
You know, have a good life, I guess. But you guys are all really great. Please do something nice for yourself. I mean, I feel that goes without saying, but things are just so hard right now, and it has been so beautiful for me and Alan to be able to organize this, and we're just so grateful to you, and we'll talk to you soon. Probably should let you go.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good night.
Have a great night. Thank you so
Bye.
much for
So much. Thank you, Kristi and Alan.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Bye.
Thank you.